Hey y'all, it's been a minute. I know. Long story short, I'm moving to Thailand. That's a whole other conversation for another day. What are we going to be talking about today? So there was a blackout in Spain, Portugal, France, and from what I've been hearing, bits and pieces of other countries, but mainly those three countries. And I'm currently living in Barcelona. So that hit, and it pretty much confirmed I already knew I didn't want to survive the apocalypse. But this reaffirmed that for me. So I'm going to share four things that I learned during this recent blackout, complete and total blackout in Spain. So one, this is my experience of what happened. I woke up. I was hanging out, doing little things in bed, mostly just like filling out. I was able to write two very important emails, and I hit send. And then shortly after I hit send, literally in under 10 minutes after I hit send to those two emails, everything went dark. Everything went dark. At first, I thought it was just my apartment, so I reached out to my landlord. I still had like cell service somehow at that time. So I messaged my landlord on WhatsApp, be like, hey, this is what's happening. I don't know if it's just my apartment, but I have no power. Can somebody just come by and fix it? I go outside because I start hearing a beep and the elevator's not working. So I'm like, okay, it's the entire building. Fast forward, I'm going outside and I'm noticing that all of the stores are closed, and also there's significantly more people out and about on the street. And then I'm walking past and I'm seeing the grocery stores are closed, and I'm seeing everything's closed. And some of the grocery stores, like the smaller grocery stores, are like kind of open, but the I can't remember what it's called. It's not like chain. It's not like a chain link situation, but whatever that garter is, that middle garter that stops people from like breaking and entering. Some of those are half open, and so I'm able to peek down, and everything is pitch black inside, and I'm like, oh my god. So then I make my way to school, and school is all the teachers are outside and all the students are outside, and we're like, do we even have class? We did have class, but a lot of people couldn't make it. Why couldn't a lot of people make it? Because they were trapped in the subways. Not only were they trapped in the subways, but on my walk to school, I was walking past a gym that had like an electric door that opened and closed, like an electric glass door. And as I was walking past, there were a bunch of people that were trapped inside the gym. It was just like a giant wall of windows. And I was like, and they were like, and I'm like, because they couldn't leave because it was all electric. I think that they eventually were able to find like a door and like a key to a manual door somewhere, because by the time that I left school and came back, I didn't see them in there, but still scary. So I immediately go into, because I survived Hurricane Sandy. Now we're going to be hopping back to that in a little bit, because I was I was in school right where Hurricane Sandy hit. My school was underwater. I knew somebody that had to get helivaced out of school. We're getting to that in a little bit. So school, even like before school, I realized, oh my god, I don't have any cash on me. One of my classmates had about like $10. I grabbed a couple of like nutrition heavy like non-perishables. I'm like, okay, I need to go back to my apartment, see what cash I have, so that way I could get some food to last a couple of days, and water. So I go and I do that. Mind you, I go and I do that, and I'm walking down the street and everybody is partying, which leads me to like my first actual point, is that handy dandy time. So party over survival until the men realize no one is watching. And I don't think that second part kicked in for anybody, because it was just, oh, okay, we don't get to use our phones. We don't have to like be on our laptops. Let's just hang out. Let's just be a part of this community. Which like, it's all great and beautiful and lovely. And I love the idea of that. If we knew 100% that this was going to be a finite thing, thank goodness it was. But if it wasn't, I know what it is like to be in a natural disaster situation where no one is watching, where no one will hold the people accountable that have the impulse to do harm, to do crime. And you don't have enough water, and you don't have enough food, and you have to go out and find it. You do not want to be outside during those times. So yeah, there was a lot of partying that was happening on the street. I was walking by so many people that just like, people blew hundreds of euro on beer because you can't let the beer get warm. And I'm just like, We don't know when this blackout will end. Everybody's fridges and freezers there's no power. And the amount of beer and the amount of wine and the amount of like cocktails and beverage, I can't even say cocktails, really, I just saw beer. And I'm assuming that some people had wine. I have a classmate who like went in on the vermouths with some of the other classmates, and like thank goodness that she had a fun time, everybody else had a fun time, like a giant group gathered for like other classmates and strangers, and they just like party party party. And I'm like, listen, I love that, but I after I got my water and I carried it up those five flights of stairs, I came in, I locked my massive metal door, and I hunkered down. Now, thankfully, it was at around 10:30 p.m. that I was able to get power. And there was like loud, like jubilant screams in the streets and all of that yesterday, which once again, absolutely a thing to celebrate. But we did not know that this was the thing that was going to be coming around, that we would be able to get power so quickly, and that people didn't have time to switch into that survival mode, which for some people is survival mode, but for a lot of people it's also the purge. Now let's just briefly go back to the Hurricane Sandy situation. So I was a junior, I was either a junior or sophomore when Hurricane Sandy hit, and it hit hard. And I and everybody else in my school was encouraged to evacuate because I went to school on the Jersey Shore. So I evacuated and I went to my aunt's house, who was a little bit more inland, thinking, oh yeah, that would be fine. Yes, it was safer, significantly safer. But when the storm came, hit, and left, and there was no power, and we realized, oh my goodness, we are either going to be stranded or we have to find power, hijack power. There were no calm everyday streets, were speedways for people. People tried to hijack power out of ShopRite, out of the supermarkets, out of people. It was a lawless land. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, the only thing that is stopping the terrifying men from doing what they want to do is the fact that the laws will hold them accountable. Why do you think there's so many conversations of, oh, she turned 18? Because that legally stops them from getting into trouble. If those men could legally go lower, 13, 16, 12, they would. Because, oh, well, the law said it's okay. So, but what if the law wasn't watching? That is the part that really concerned me. And I said, you know what? I hear that there's a lot of fun happening outside. That fun can get flipped real quick, and I don't want to see what happens. And this is the final thing. I do not want to have to think like this. I don't want to think, oh, there's no power. How am I going to survive if a man comes and tries to barge through my giant metal door? Oh, there's all of this joyful partying and drinking and people like hanging out on the street. Oh, this would be a great time for me to ideally it would be a great time for me to go out there, meet new people, hang out, party with my other classmates into the whatever hours of but as a Black woman in a largely non-Black space, in the heart of Whitelandia, Europe itself, I don't want to put myself in a situation, I will dare say in another situation, because my whole experience for New Year's this past year, I don't need to learn another lesson twice. What men will do when they think that no one is watching, when they think that they cannot be held accountable, is nothing short of a nightmare scenario.
So I give a quick peek at the post that I made that was talking about the information that I had at the time regarding the blackout that was happening in Spain. And I saw a couple of comments talking about, like, Shayna, like, don't fearmonger. Like, let's not fearmonger, right? And I'm like, I don't think I was fearmongering. I think this was like a reasonable response given like the history of what happens to women during while it wasn't a full-blown natural disaster, during disasters in general. So I want to talk more about that. And I also want to say that with the information that I had at the time, with the international community that I have here in Spain, it was looking like it was all of Europe at that time with the information that we were all able to ascertain. I now know that it was not all of Europe. It took me time to figure that out, but yeah, when there's no power and no electricity, there's only so much information that you have. I put that in the update. But yeah, now let's dive in. So first, within the context of what I'm talking about, all of these documents will be in the description also, but let's break down what a disaster is. So a disaster is any event that causes damage, disruption, brings harm to humans, or breaks down health or health services in such a way that an extraordinary response is needed from those outside the disaster. Like I said, I do not think that this was like a massive disaster in the way that like Hurricane Katrina was or Hurricane Sandy was. But I do think that extraordinary things happened during this time. And there was a breakdown in health services. There was absolutely a disruption in the way that, everyday life was going. And I think that if it did not end when it ended, and people actually started to feel the lack of resources that would have happened had this blackout continued for a couple of days, we would have entered full-blown disaster status. And I was not willing to be on the ground partying when I could just like have a gentle prep and keep myself safe. Why? Because sexual violence increases during disasters. You can look this up. Numbers of studies and articles will bring this up. So these are some of the reasons why sexual assault increases during all kinds of disasters. The most vulnerable are left behind. There's overly crowded spaces. This is more specific to crowded spaces where people go to seek refuge. So this is talking about Hurricane Katrina and how assaults against women and children started happening immediately after people entered the Superdome just seeking shelter because there were women and children right next to schmex offenders. Also, tension and stress. This was a huge one. I can't say that there was a whole lot of tension and stress right away here. It was more of oh, this is just a fun thing that's happening. But that would have quickly become tension and stress if this went on for longer. People went home, their refrigerators weren't working, they didn't have power, and they're like, oh no, what are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? Because the water can only run for so long without power. This would have built up a whole lot of tension and stress real soon. An atmosphere of chaos. Now, once again, I am not saying that it was immediately chaotic. Honestly, it was a little bit chaotic, but it was mostly just a lot of rampant partying and fun looking nonsense in the street. But this changes very quickly when depleted resources start to become super apparent. So you get all of that going. And then it's going to be incredibly hard to actually get the police or the fire department to come and see you during this time, if something were to happen. Because like I said, from where I was, and I had to wander around Barcelona for a little bit because of school and because of all that, there were police and firefighters booking it as quickly as they could because there were just so many traffic jams everywhere, as quickly as they could all day. And even if somebody were to be able to come to you and get you and potentially help you, as somebody who had to report somebody who tried to assault me, well, technically they did put drugs in my drink, so I guess I was assaulted in that way, but they wanted to do more. Maybe, I don't know. But violence was committed against me, and I had to go and file a police report. And the amount of gaslighting that I received in just trying to file that police report, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So yeah, I said, maybe stay indoors. Maybe stock up on food and get some water and hunker down. Because I would rather, there were a lot of people that had a whole lot of fun yesterday. I was not, no, whenever that blackout was, I was not necessarily one of those people, but I knew 100% that I was going to put myself in a position where I could be safer. I mean, safety is more of an idea, where I could be as safe as possible and not put myself as in the line of fire as other people in case things made a hard left turn and it was going to be hard to get help, to get resources, and to get to safety. And now, in the midst of this, let's talk about trauma. I trust people way less now than I did before my New Year's incident. There was a lot of partying and drinking with strangers in the street yesterday. I'm not about that in the way that I was before what happened to me. A lot of those strangers were men that I don't know. And yeah, but there were also a lot of women out there. But once again, what happened on New Year's opened my eyes to a lot of things. Now, do I think that this is solely a trauma response? No, I think that there was a lot of good information, unfortunately, that I like. Good information is good information, but because the experience in which I gained that information, looking back on it, that's the thing that kind of hurts, right? So for example, when during New Year's, I was around women that I kind of knew but kind of didn't, but I'm like, oh, okay, like we're women who support women. We're like paying attention for each other, we're looking out for each other. Not necessarily the case because I like there were people that I just kind of met on a trip that I had. So they weren't necessarily looking out for me as much. They were looking out for the others around them. And then you add that with an unusual thing that is happening that could lead to a pretty massive disaster in the near future. And then you put alcohol in the midst. And I cannot understate this enough. I am a Black woman living in a country where there are very few Black people. Black women in Spain. Let me not talk about Spain in general. In Barcelona, highly sexualized. There's a whole part of Raval where it's known as basically the red light district, and there are a lot of Black migrant women that are working there because they're not allowed to like work in more formalized job like institutions. So a lot of people travel into Barcelona and go to that part of Raval for the sex industry specifically, and most of the people that are working on that, like I actually saw this. Somebody brought me there to be like, because I was talking about, oh my goodness, I think that there's something weird happening here in Barcelona because I've never been so sexualized in my life. Somebody brought me there to be like, Shayna, this might be why. And like, this is part of the culture here. And people travel into Barcelona for this. I'm not putting myself in the midst of a boiling pot of who knows what when all of this is going around. No, thank you. No, thank you. So for those of you who are talking about fear mongering, listen, if you consider it fear mongering, then you take that, then don't listen to what I'm saying. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Next time that there's a blackout, you go outside and you have the time of your life. Ignore this video, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but hey, if you consider me to be fear mongering, then you do whatever you are led to do. But for the people that are like, you know what, I think she might be onto something, take this information, and when I say be safe out there, know that I mean that with my chest. Okay, I think those are all of my thoughts. Please leave yours in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Okay, bye y'all.